Hey guys, 𝗙𝗥𝗢𝗔𝗚𝗘 here, and I am back with a video about how to fix broken lugs on your Bowflex SelectTech dumbbell dials. It applies to the 552 Series 1, the Series 2, and the 1090. What are broken lugs? I've showed you in some past videos that eventually this plastic becomes brittle with age, and from the forces of turning that dial back and forth all the time, you'll eventually shear off those lugs. You can see this one has already started, but eventually they will be gone completely. Here's one that only one lug broke off and the other two are just fine. And in instances like that, what ends up happening is instead of the dial turning your discs together in order to select your weights, the dial will just start turning by itself, and it will no longer turn these discs to select your weights, and that's a problem. Now, of course, I took it to the extreme, and later this year I'll be coming out with my custom dials, but for a lot of folks, you just want to kind of get back into the game now. You want to do it for a reasonable price. If you go out and you buy a replacement dial on a site like eBay, oftentimes those dials are old like the dials that you have. The only difference is their lugs haven't broken yet, but the plastic has aged in the same way that the plastic on your own dumbbell has aged. So you're going to go buy that dial, and maybe it'll work for a couple years, and maybe it won't. It may end up that you'll get broken lugs within a relatively short period of time. So this fix should be a little bit more permanent, and hopefully something that you can do with tools that you can find around the house. What are we trying to accomplish? Okay, so when you look at the remnants of these lugs, you will see that there is a pattern like this on your dial. And if you look up close, you can kind of see what's left over from the lugs that were there. Here, I marked it with 2 black dots, but you can kind of see the remnants of the lug that's there. So this is what you're working with. And in order for this to turn this disc, you need to rebuild the lugs, but you don't need to rebuild the entire lug. It's not necessary. Now, a couple years ago when I made my first disc fix, notice what I did. I did not make lugs like this. I actually used pins to represent the ends of the lugs. So effectively, I was doing this. I basically said, oh, I don't need this entire lug. I just need a pin at each end of the lug. Now, you don't want them like this. This would be loose. This dial would end up loose in this disc. You want the pin to be as far to the end of the lug as possible. And that way, when you put your pins into your disc, it turns together. It functions just like the lugs. So that's what we're going to do in this video, but I'm going to show you what you can do with stuff that you have around the house. So let me put this stuff aside, and we're going to take a look at the very first step. The first step is to try to find a couple common tools that you're going to have around the house. Now, what I did was grabbed a couple different kinds of nails just to show you. This nail is perfectly fine. You can use this. If you want to go with a thicker nail, just keep in mind that there is a limit to what will fit inside this groove, okay? So this will work, and I think this is about 1/8 of an inch. This is about a little over 1/16 of an inch, but basically you can use anything like this, okay? Then you're going to need the corresponding drill bit and drill, of course, in order to drill these holes. You're going to want something to cut the nail to length when it comes time for that. You're going to need a file to file down the cut nail so that you can take the burrs off of it. You'll deburr it. And finally, you'll want some sort of hammer or anything that you can pound on the nail in order to get it down into the plastic dial. So let me put this aside and show you step by step what I've done here. The very first thing I did was I marked the ends of the lug shape. Okay, now when I say the end, what am I really talking about? I'm talking about this center here. I know how thick my nail is. I want to identify the center that I need to drill in order to create a hole that touches as closely as possible the end of this lug. So I marked those two locations. Then, using my drill bit, I drill down into those two locations. And you can go down, you know, at least a ½ inch. So, you know, don't drill too shallow. There's enough meat on these discs that you can drill a good ½ inch down into them. No problem. It won't, you know, make things worse. Then you're going to put a nail, the nail that, or whatever it is that you're using, into the hole, and you're going to pound this in until it's nice and snug in that hole. Now, if you happened to drill this hole too big, you may end up having to use an epoxy or some other glue in order to get this to seat and stay in the hole. In this case, I drilled a hole slightly smaller than the nail that I was going to put into it, and you pound this down into that hole. Then you're going to cut this nail to length. Now, what do I mean by that? If you look here, you can see about how high the existing lug is. I cut a little bit above it, so I'm not going to cut down at the same height as the lug. I'm going to cut a little bit above it. And you clip that off. And now you're left with a length like this. And it has a sharp burr on the top, but I'll show you what you can do to take care of that. Now, ultimately, what you're looking to accomplish is this here. You can see that these nails are at the end of where this lug used to be. Now, in this case, I left the lug intact. See, this is a partially damaged lug. You can leave it intact. You don't need to cut it off. In some cases, you'll be dealing with a completely missing lug like this. And in other cases, you'll be dealing with a lug that is still partially there. But in both cases, what you're going to do is cut that nail down, and then you can either, using a combination of your hammer or a file, you can file this. Let me move this out of the way. You can file this down until you're at the same height as your existing lug. And if you want, you can also round over the edges of the nail as well. When you are done, you should have something like this, and the height from here to here only needs to be about 2.5 to 3 millimeters. You don't really need to go over 3 millimeters. In fact, you don't want to go over 3 millimeters because the pockets in these discs are only so deep. And you can see the height of the original lugs as a reference on your other dials. If you want to see and compare what you did to what is there, you can actually put these together and see, one moment here, and see if you've got the height about the same as the original dials. And once you do that, now you can put your dial back in your discs, and you're going to have what I hope to be a tight fit with metal pins, in this case some very strong little nails that will not break like those lugs. At least I would imagine they could hold forever, but it should last quite a while. And that should get you through to, not have to necessarily buy an entire dial. Now, obviously, again, I took it to the extreme, and if you want to do an upgrade that has heftier weight, that has other features on it like the flat back, then these will be available later this year. But if you just want to do a quick fix, you can do that with, simple nails and linesman pliers, files, and drill at home. You probably have these tools laying around the house. If you want to get a little more fancy, you can use things like aluminum rod and drill a larger hole and put a piece of aluminum rod in there. But this is really overkill. A steel nail is plenty. And in fact, you can see that I used a much smaller nail. And this is plenty. This will do, this will last. So that's it, guys. Hopefully, for those of you who have broken lugs, this will give you a solution that'll get you through. And if you have any questions about it, shoot me an email. If you like this channel, I hope you'll consider subscribing. And I will see you all in the next video.